the 1890s patent that claimed to break time. In a dusty file cabinet in the basement of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, there's a document that shouldn't exist. Patent number 428,057, filed March 14, 1890, granted to one Samuel M. Gordon of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The title reads, Apparatus for Traversing Temporal Dimensions via Controlled Oscillation of Electromagnetic Fields. In simpler terms, a time machine. Not a theoretical paper, not a thought experiment. A detailed mechanical patent with 47 pages of technical drawings, mathematical formulas, and construction specifications for a device Gordon called the Chrononautilus. A machine he claimed could navigate through time as easily as a ship navigates water. The patent was granted. The U.S. government officially recognized Gordon's time travel machine as a legitimate invention, assigned it a number, filed it in the public record, and presumably expected someone would build it. No one did, or at least no record exists of anyone building it. The patent was forgotten within years, buried under thousands of more practical inventions, better telegraphs, improved steam engines, electric lighting systems, the technologies that actually shaped the 1890s. But the Chrononautilus patent didn't disappear entirely. Every few decades, someone would stumble across it, a patent clerk, a historian, a physicist browsing old records. They'd read the specifications, study the drawings, try to understand what Gordon was proposing. And they'd ask the same questions. Was Samuel M. Gordon a genius who understood physics decades before Einstein? Was he a con artist creating elaborate fiction? Or was he something else entirely? Someone who glimpsed something real but couldn't quite explain it in the language of his time. This is the story of the Chrononautilus, the most detailed, most technically sophisticated time machine patent ever filed. A device that either represents a forgotten breakthrough in theoretical physics or the most elaborate mechanical fantasy in patent history. And the strange thing is, we still can't definitively say which. Samuel M. Gordon appears in historical records like a ghost, present but barely visible, leaving just enough trace to prove he existed, but not enough to understand who he was. Birth records show a Samuel Gordon born in Philadelphia in 1847. Census records list him as a mechanical engineer in 1880 and 1890. City directories show an address on Market Street where he apparently maintained a workshop. But beyond these basic facts, Gordon is a mystery. No photographs survive, no personal correspondence, no business records, no mention in contemporary newspapers beyond a few brief notices about patent filings. What we do have is his work. Between 1885 and 1895, Gordon filed 17 patents. Most were for practical mechanical devices, an improved gear mechanism, a more efficient water pump, a device for measuring electrical resistance. Legitimate inventions, some of which were actually manufactured and sold. These patents show Gordon was competent. He understood mechanics, mathematics, electricity. He could create detailed technical drawings and write clear specifications. He was a real engineer, not a crank or a fantasist. Which makes patent number 428,057 so baffling. Because sandwiched between patents for mundane mechanical improvements is this: a detailed design for a machine claiming to manipulate time itself using principles that wouldn't be theoretically possible until Einstein published his special theory of relativity in 1905, 15 years after Gordon's patent. How did an engineer in 1890 propose a device based on concepts like spacetime curvature, electromagnetic field manipulation, and relativistic physics that hadn't been invented yet? The patent document for the Chrononautilus is extraordinary in its detail. This isn't vague speculation or philosophical musing. Gordon provides specific measurements, materials, construction methods, and theoretical justification for every component. The device itself, as described in the patent, is a chamber approximately 8 feet tall and 6 feet in diameter. The exterior is constructed of copper sheets, with an inner layer of what Gordon calls magnetically neutral material, possibly lead or a lead alloy. Inside this double-walled chamber is a series of rotating electromagnetic coils arranged in a specific geometric pattern Gordon refers to as the temporal spiral. The coils are powered by what Gordon describes as a high-frequency alternating current generator that must maintain precise oscillatory synchronization. In 1890, AC current was still experimental. Tesla and Edison were in the middle of the war of the currents, and most electrical systems used DC power. Gordon not only specified AC power, but detailed the exact frequency required. Oscillations must maintain 186,282 cycles per second, corresponding to the fundamental constant of luminous propagation. That number, 186,282, is suspiciously close to the speed of light in miles per second, 186,282 miles per second. In 1890, the speed of light was known, but it wasn't yet understood as a fundamental constant of the universe. That wouldn't come until Einstein. Gordon was using the speed of light as the basis for his machine's operating frequency. Why? According to the patent's theoretical section, Gordon believed that temporal dimension and luminous propagation are manifestations of the same fundamental phenomenon. He proposed that by creating electromagnetic oscillations at precisely the frequency of light, and arranging these oscillations in a specific geometric pattern, the Chrononautilus could create what he called a temporal resonance field that would allow the occupant to traverse the fourth dimension as one traverses the familiar three. The fourth dimension. In 1890, the idea of time as a fourth dimension was just emerging in mathematics. H.G. Wells wouldn't publish The Time Machine until 1895. Spacetime as a unified concept wouldn't exist until Einstein. Yet Gordon was describing time as a dimension that could be navigated, using electromagnetic fields oscillating at the speed of light. Either he was extraordinarily lucky in his guesses, or he understood something about the nature of time that he couldn't fully articulate in the scientific language available to him. The technical drawings in the patent are where things get really strange. Drawing number 7 shows the interior configuration of the electromagnetic coils. They're arranged in a specific pattern, a three-dimensional spiral that, when you analyze it mathematically, corresponds to what's now called a toroidal helix. This is a shape used in modern plasma physics and tokamak fusion reactors to contain superheated plasma using magnetic fields. Gordon couldn't have known about tokamaks. They wouldn't be invented for another 70 years. But he drew one, or something very similar. Drawing number 12 shows what Gordon calls the temporal navigation apparatus, a series of mechanical dials and switches that supposedly allow the operator to select the desired temporal coordinate. The drawing shows 3 primary controls, one labeled temporal direction, anterior-posterior, one labeled temporal velocity, and one labeled temporal inertial compensation. That last one is particularly interesting. Gordon wrote, "Rapid temporal displacement without proper inertial compensation would subject the operator to forces analogous to those experienced in rapid spatial acceleration. The compensation mechanism ensures the operator's physical structure remains synchronized with the temporal field." This is describing time dilation effects, the idea that time travel might require accounting for relativistic forces. In 1890, nobody had any reason to think this would be necessary, but Gordon included it. Drawing number 23 shows the power system. Gordon specified that the Chrononautilus would require continuous power generation of no less than 47 kilowatts sustained over the duration of temporal displacement. For context, that's roughly the power consumption of a small modern house. In 1890, The largest electrical generators produced maybe 10 kilowatts. Gordon's power requirements were absurd for his era, but they're also specific and calculated based on the rest of his design. He did the math. He showed his work. He proved, at least within his own theoretical framework, that these power levels were necessary. When the patent was filed in March 1890, it went to a patent examiner named Charles L. Mitchell. Mitchell's job was to review patent applications for novelty, usefulness, and feasibility. Normally, a patent claiming to enable time travel would be rejected immediately as perpetual motion or impossible device, or simply physically absurd. The Patent Office had seen hundreds of crank inventions, machines claiming to violate thermodynamics, create energy from nothing, achieve impossible results. But the Chrononautilus patent wasn't rejected, it was approved. Why? We have Mitchell's notes preserved in the patent file. He wrote, "While the applicant's claims regarding temporal navigation are extraordinary and without experimental verification, the device described is a detailed mechanical and electrical apparatus making specific, testable claims. The theoretical framework, though unconventional, is internally consistent. The mathematical calculations appear sound within the applicant's stated assumptions. I find no prior art that would invalidate the claims. The device is novel. Whether it would function as claimed cannot be determined without construction and testing, which is beyond the scope of patent examination. Recommendation: approve patent. Classification: experimental apparatus electrical." In other words, Mitchell couldn't prove the Chrononautilus wouldn't work. Gordon's technical specifications were so detailed, so internally consistent, that Mitchell couldn't identify a fundamental flaw that would justify rejection. This is important. The patent wasn't approved because Mitchell believed in time travel. It was approved because Gordon had created such a sophisticated design that even an expert examiner couldn't definitively say it was impossible. After the patent was granted in July 1890, Gordon apparently tried to raise money to build the Chrononautilus. A brief notice in the Philadelphia Inquirer from September 1890 mentions, "Mr. Samuel Gordon, local inventor, seeking capital investment for construction of temporal navigation device, inquiries to Market Street Workshop." There's no evidence anyone invested, no records of construction, no reports of demonstrations or tests. Gordon filed 3 more patents in 1891, all for conventional mechanical devices. Then silence. No more patents, no more public records. Samuel M. Gordon disappears from history after 1891. We don't know when he died. We don't know what happened to his workshop, his papers, his prototype components if any existed. He simply vanishes from the historical record as mysteriously as the Chrononautilus patent appeared in it. But the patent remained, filed official public record. The next person we know of who seriously examined the Chrononautilus patent was Dr. Margaret Chen in 1967. Chen was a physicist at MIT, working on electromagnetic theory and quantum mechanics. She was researching historical patents on electromagnetic devices when she stumbled across Gordon's filing. She spent 6 months analyzing the patent, checking Gordon's mathematics, trying to understand his theoretical framework within the context of modern physics. Her conclusion, published in a 1968 paper in the Journal of Historical Physics, was startling. Gordon's device, while certainly non-functional as described, demonstrates a remarkable intuitive grasp of concepts that would not be formalized until decades after his patent. His temporal resonance field bears suspicious similarity to certain solutions of Einstein's field equations. His electromagnetic coil configuration approximates magnetic confinement geometries used in modern plasma physics. Most remarkably, his specification of oscillation frequency at 186,282 cycles per second corresponding to the speed of light, suggests an understanding that time and light propagation are fundamentally connected, a relationship that is central to relativity, but was not understood in 1890. While Gordon's specific mechanism is based on incorrect physics, the underlying intuition shows either extraordinary luck or genuine insight into the nature of spacetime that he could not properly formalize within the scientific framework of his era. Chen tried to find more information about Gordon. She searched Philadelphia archives, contacted genealogists, looked for any trace of his life beyond the patents. She found almost nothing, but she did find one thing, a brief mention in an 1889 article about Philadelphia's scientific community. The article listed Mr. Samuel Gordon, electrical experimenter, known for his work on high-frequency, alternating currents and investigations into the relationship between electromagnetic radiation and temporal phenomena. Temporal phenomena. In 1889, Gordon was already thinking about time and electromagnetism. The Chrononautilus wasn't a sudden delusion. It was the culmination of ongoing research. In 1985, a group of electrical engineers at Caltech decided to actually try building Gordon's device. Not the full Chrononautilus. That would require resources and power generation beyond what a university research project could access, but a scaled model that could test some of Gordon's claims about electromagnetic field configurations. They built a chamber 6 feet tall, lined with copper, containing a simplified version of Gordon's electromagnetic coil arrangement. They powered it with the highest frequency AC current they could generate consistently, 50,000 cycles per second, far below Gordon's specified 186,282, but the closest they could manage. The device did something. When powered up, instruments inside the chamber measured unusual electromagnetic effects. Time measurements taken inside the chamber using atomic clocks showed anomalies, inconsistencies of a few nanoseconds compared to clocks outside the chamber. Nanoseconds, meaningless in practical terms, probably experimental error, probably instrument malfunction. But the Caltech team couldn't explain the discrepancy. They ran the experiment multiple times. The anomaly persisted. Clocks inside Gordon's field configuration ran slightly slower than clocks outside it, an effect that, if real, would be consistent with relativistic time dilation. The team published their results cautiously. We observed potential temporal anomalies that require further investigation. While these effects are consistent with certain predictions of relativity, we cannot rule out systematic errors in our equipment or methodology. Further experimentation with higher frequency power sources may yield more conclusive results. They never got funding for those further experiments. The project was abandoned, but the Caltech results remain. A peer-reviewed paper documenting that a device based on Samuel Gordon's 1890 patent showed measurable, unexplained time effects. Modern physicists who have examined the Chrononautilus patent generally agree on a few points. First, the device as described could not function as a time machine. Gordon's understanding of electromagnetic fields was incomplete. His theoretical framework, while remarkably prescient in some ways, was fundamentally incorrect in others. Even if built exactly to specifications, the Chrononautilus would not enable time travel. Second, Gordon's design shows knowledge or intuition about physics that shouldn't have been accessible in 1890. The frequency matching the speed of light, the toroidal coil configuration, the concept of time dilation, effects requiring inertial compensation. These are all elements that align with physics discovered decades later. Third, nobody can explain how Gordon came up with these ideas. If he was just guessing, he made extraordinarily lucky guesses. If he understood something genuine, he couldn't articulate it properly in the scientific language of his time. Dr. James Wheeler, a physicist at Princeton who studied the patent in 2003, wrote, Gordon appears to have glimpsed the shadow of relativity without being able to see the full picture. He understood that time and electromagnetic radiation were connected, that high-frequency electromagnetic fields might interact with temporal dimensions, that such interaction would require enormous energy and produce relativistic effects. These are all correct intuitions. But he lacked the mathematical framework of tensor calculus, the experimental verification of Maxwell's equations, the conceptual vocabulary of spacetime that would allow him to develop these intuitions into working theory. He was a man trying to describe quantum mechanics using Newtonian language, inevitably imprecise, but showing flashes of genuine insight. There's one more piece of the Chrononautilus mystery that nobody has adequately explained. In the patent's conclusion, Gordon included a brief note that has no technical purpose, serves no function in the patent documentation, and reads like something inserted almost as an afterthought. Should this apparatus prove functional as designed, the operator is cautioned against certain temporal destinations. Specifically, avoid the period April 14-18, 1906. The confluent temporal streams during this interval create navigational instabilities that may prevent accurate return. April 14-18, 1906. Gordon wrote this in 1890, 16 years before the date he warned against. On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., the San Francisco earthquake struck. Magnitude 7.9. The city was destroyed. Over 3,000 people died. It remains one of the most devastating natural disasters in American history. Gordon warned against visiting that specific 5-day period, 16 years before it happened, before there was any reason to think those particular dates would be significant. Coincidence? Probably. There's no reason Gordon would have known about a future earthquake, no mechanism by which he could have. Unless his Chrononautilus actually worked, unless he or someone else built it, tested it, traveled to April 1906, and returned with the knowledge that those dates were dangerous. But there's no evidence anyone built the device. No records of construction, no photographs, no contemporary accounts of anyone attempting time travel. Just the warning, specific, dated, accurate. The Chrononautilus patent remains in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office archives. Patent number 428,057, available to anyone who wants to examine it. Every few years, someone new discovers it. A student researching historical patents, a physicist interested in the history of their field, an inventor looking for expired patents that might inspire new designs. They read Gordon's specifications, study his drawings, try to understand his theoretical framework, and they ask the same questions. How did he know? What did he understand? Was this pure speculation that happened to align with future discoveries, or did Gordon genuinely glimpse something about the nature of time that he couldn't fully articulate? We'll probably never know. Samuel M. Gordon is gone. His workshop is gone. Any prototypes or experimental notes are gone. All that remains is the patent, 47 pages of technical drawings and specifications for a device claiming to navigate time using electromagnetic fields oscillating at the speed of light. A device that modern physics says couldn't work, but that keeps showing elements that shouldn't have been possible in 1890. That keeps generating unexplained results when researchers try to replicate parts of it. That keeps refusing to be simply dismissed as Victorian fantasy. The patent expires in 1907, 17 years after filing, as was standard. At that point, anyone could freely use Gordon's design, build the Chrononautilus, test whether it works. No record exists of anyone doing so. Or perhaps the record just hasn't been found yet. Perhaps somewhere in the archives of some forgotten research institution, there's documentation of someone building Gordon's device, testing it, learning whether the warnings about April 1906 came from prediction or experience. Perhaps Samuel Gordon himself built it. Perhaps that's why he disappears from records after 1891, not because he died, but because he went somewhere else. Someone else. Or perhaps it's all coincidence, lucky guesses. A competent engineer with unconventional ideas who happened to propose configurations that look like future discoveries, happened to specify frequencies that match fundamental constants, happened to warn against dates that would later prove significant. Coincidence is certainly the most rational explanation. But the Chrononautilus patent sits there in the archives, detailed and specific and unexplained, waiting for someone to finally decode whether Samuel Gordon was a genius, a charlatan, or something that 1890 science had no language to describe. The blueprints exist, the specifications are public, the device could be built. All it would take is someone willing to risk discovering that Samuel Gordon understood time better than we do now. And perhaps, somewhere in time, he's waiting to see if anyone accepts that challenge.